Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're joining us from, and welcome to today's webinar, Staying Competitive in Food Manufacturing, Closing the Gaps Between ERP and Plant Floor Reality. My name is Casey Flanagan. I'm an associate editor with PMMI Media Group, and I will be moderating today's webinar. We have a great program planned for you, but before we begin, here's something you don't want to miss, and that's Pack Expo International 2026, happening October 18th to the 21st in Chicago. This is the most comprehensive packaging and processing event in North America, bringing together 2,600 exhibitors and solutions for over 40 vertical industries. You'll see a lot of cross-industry technology and, of course, machinery up and running on the show floor. If you want to see what's new in the industry, connect with suppliers, hear from experts, and not only find solutions for your projects, but compare multiple options all in one place, you need to be there. Now is the time to register for the show. And as a webinar participant, you can register for free using the comp code webinar. Visit packexpointernational.com. Now, a few housekeeping items. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see the chat section. This is where you can share your thoughts and connect with other attendees throughout the session. Keep in mind all comments shared here are public, so feel free to jump in now and let us know where you're joining from. We'll also be keeping an eye on the chat for questions for our speakers. You can post them at any time, and we'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A period at the end. Any we don't get to will be passed along to the speakers for follow-up afterward. After today's event, you'll receive a follow-up email with a short survey. We'd love your feedback. You'll also get a link to watch the on-demand recording once it's available. If our speakers or sponsors have shared any extra materials, you can find them in the handout section located just below the video window. Now, on to today's webinar. Food manufacturers rely on ERP platforms to manage production, quality, traceability, and compliance. But many find their ERP systems don't fully account for real-world variables like fluctuating yields, ingredient substitutions, or frequent recipe adjustments. As a result, critical production data is often managed outside the ERP system, reducing visibility and increasing risk. In this session, an industry expert will share where ERP systems commonly fall short and how food manufacturers can address these challenges without adding unnecessary complexity. So now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Joining us today is Randy Smith, CEO and co-founder of Vicinity Software. I know you'll enjoy today's presentation, and I'm excited to get things started. So with that, Randy, the floor is now yours.
Great. Thanks a lot. Hey, everyone. Thanks for taking some time to be here today and inviting me to this session. And I'm really glad you could join us. So this is what we're going to deal with today, and we're going to dig into something I really think all of you deal with every single day. That's the frustrating gap between what your ERP tells you and what's actually going on your plant floor. We're going to talk about where that gap comes from, what it's actually costing you, and what companies like yours are dealing to fix it. So let's get into it. So here's the plan for today. We're kicking things off with industry pressures you're up against right now, and honestly, they're not letting up anytime soon. Then we're going to get into where standard ERP systems run into trouble with process manufacturing. And to be fair, where they actually do shine. We'll look at how food manufacturers are closing that gap, walking through a framework you can actually use when evaluating technology, and then we'll wrap up with some Q&A. Throw your questions in the chat whenever they come up. I'll do my best to get to it as soon as I can at the end. So real quick, just a little bit about me so you know where I'm coming from. I started out as a CPA, working at Arthur Andersen as a financial auditor, and then went on to Deloitte & Touche and became a system consultant. That gave me some solid grounding on where the financial side of the business needs to connect with operations. Then I spent over 25 years doing hands-on ERP implementations in batch and formula manufacturing industries, companies like chemical and food and brewery and distilleries. And I kept running into the same wall. These systems just weren't built for that kind of variability that food manufacturers deal with every single day. So in 2001, my co-founder and I started Vicinity to build the thing we kept wishing existed. Since then, I've worked directly with operations, quality, and IT teams at hundreds of food and beverage companies. That's really where today's content comes from. What I've seen actually working in the real world, implementing software similar to our own. All right, so let's get into some numbers. Because this stuff adds up really fast. 15 to 20% of manufacturing revenue can walk right out the door due to poor quality. That might be poor quality of the raw materials. It may be affected through processing, or maybe even just in packaging. That number is not a rounding error. That's a massive chunk of your business. The average food recall, over $10 million. And that's before you factor in what it does to your brand. 14% of food is lost somewhere between harvest and retail. And 5 to 10% of your production capacity just evaporates because of inefficient processes. These aren't worst case scenarios. These are averages across the industry. If you're still patching things together with spreadsheets and manual workarounds, you're probably contributing to at least some of these. The good news is that every one of these is fixable. So here's the root problem, the root of the problem. Most ERP systems were originally built for discrete manufacturing. You need to understand that 70% of all manufacturers are discrete manufacturers. 30% are batch process manufacturers. So the numbers are with discrete manufacturing, particularly when it is attracting software developers. So for discrete manufacturing, think your car parts, your electronics, your consumer goods. These worlds assume everything is neat and predictable. Fixed bills of materials, stable inputs, linear processes. Food manufacturing is just, well, it's just not that. You've got ingredient variability changing constantly. Raw material costs are swinging all over the place. Batch yields that vary run to run, and you're making potency and quality adjustments on the fly. Think about it. Vanilla extract from one supplier isn't going to test the same as the next supplier. Flour moisture changes from one season to the next growing season. Your ERP wasn't designed for any of that, and that's where the cracks start to show. So, what do teams do when ERP can't keep up? Well, they find workarounds. And look, I get it, people are creative. Spreadsheets for yield tracking, manual quality logs, lot trace documentation in binders or separate systems, stringing together multiple assembly orders just to fake out a standard batch process. It works until it doesn't. Here's the thing that always gets people. Studies show 88% of spreadsheets contain errors. 88%. In most industries, that's an annoyance. In food manufacturing, a decimal point in the wrong place can mean a safety issue, a recall, or compliance failure. If spreadsheets are holding your production reporting together right now, that's a real risk you're carrying every single day. So this is really the core of what we're talking about today. You buy an ERP system expecting it to run your manufacturing operation end to end. That's the whole pitch, right? One system to manage everything. But the reality is most ERP systems were built around a discrete production model. Remember the 70%? They just weren't designed with process manufacturing variability in mind. So you end up spending a ton of time and money trying to force a system to do things it was never meant to do. And I want to be clear, this isn't me bashing ERP. ERP is great at a lot of things. The problem is expecting it to do everything when process manufacturing needs that to go beyond what it was built for. Once you accept that, the path forward gets a lot clearer. Okay, so let's get specific. We've got 4 gaps to walk through. And the first one is variable yields and substitutions. And I want to call out something here that I think is a really underappreciated problem. Companies will spend enormous energy on procurement trying to shave a penny or two off the cost per pound or gallon of an ingredient. And that work really matters. I'm not dismissing it. But then those same companies will run batch after batch after batch with ever scrutinizing their yields with anywhere near that same level of rigor. Think about it. Think about what that means in practice. A 1% change in your batch yield can completely wipe out every dollar you saved on the sourcing side. Every penny you negotiated with that supplier is gone. and then some. So while your procurement team is celebrating a win on ingredient cost, your operations team might quietly be giving it all back and more through lost yields that nobody's really measuring in any systematic way. That is a problem worth fixing. Now layer on top of that ingredient potency and moisture content that shift constantly. Lot by lot, season by season, supplier by supplier. Your formula calls for a specific concentration, but what shows up at the dock might test differently from lot to lot. A standard ERP system has no built-in way to handle that automatically. Then you've got the real versus theoretical yield problem. Your ERP tracks what you plan to make, not necessarily what came out of that batch, and then you add substitutions to it. When you need to swap an ingredient because of availability, costs, or supplier issue, most ERPs can't manage that dynamically. It's a ton of manual work for a substitution. These are things Vicinity and other software was specifically designed to handle in real time, not after the fact. Gap 2 is around formula and cost control, and this one hits your margins directly. Your R&D team is tweaking recipes all the time for cost-cutting measures, or adjusting ingredient availability, or meeting a label claim. But standard ERP makes formula version control really painful. You often can't easily tell which version of a formula was used on a specific batch. And that's a traceability and quality problem. Then there's the cost roll-up issue. Ingredient prices are volatile right now. Everybody knows that. If you can't quickly see how a price change flows through your margin on a specific formula, you might not find out you're losing money until it's already happened. Here's something that a lot of people don't realize is even possible, and it's a game changer. Some systems let you enter a proposed cost for an ingredient before the price increase actually hits your inventory. Other systems wait for that inventory to come in via purchase order before the ERP system can even see that new cost. With a proposed cost or something similar to that, you're essentially telling the system, hey, I know this ingredient is going to go up in cost next month. Show me what that does to my formulas right now. The system will flag every formula that's affected, so your team can review those margins. They could adjust pricing. They could reformulate before the cost change ever lands. You're not reacting. You're getting out ahead of it. That's the kind of forward visibility that turns your cost management from a fire drill into actual strategy. That's a margin erosion risk we're talking about. And it compounds every single day that your formula management isn't connected to your cost system. You need the ability to get immediate costs on your ingredients and even a tool that allows you to look forward into the future on what those costs might look like as you move forward. Gap 3 is quality and rework. It's one I hear about constantly. In most ERP systems, quality data lives somewhere else. A spreadsheet, a paper log, maybe a separate LIMS system, which means when a hold or release decision gets made, your ERP doesn't know about it in real time. So a batch gets flagged, but the system still shows it as available or coming out of production any moment. Or maybe a rework happens on the floor and the batch record doesn't fully capture it. Come audit time, that's a problem. And day to day, it means your team can't trust the system to tell them what's actually ready to ship. When quality is embedded in your production workflow, not bolted on separately, that's how it goes away. Holds are updating inventory automatically. Rework gets tracked when and where it happened, and everyone's looking at the same picture. So the key gets back to your variability. There are things that are going to happen that are difficult for some manufacturing solutions, particularly those that are built upon discrete, to be able to adjust easily. If it's not easy to adjust, chances are the users aren't going to deal with it in real time. Gap 4 is a traceability and audit risk. And I want to reframe something here, because I think people tend to think about this gap only in terms of an actual product recall. Yes, a recall is the worst case scenario. But honestly, for most companies, the more frequent and immediate threat is a routine audit. Think about it. A third-party safety audit, a customer audit, a regulatory inspection, these happen all the time. And if your documentation isn't tight, if your lot records are scattered, if your QC data is living on a separate spreadsheet somewhere, an auditor can shut your production line down just as fast as a recall can. Sometimes faster. I've seen it happen. A company gets a surprise audit, they can't produce clean batch records on demand, and suddenly they're not just scrambling to find paperwork, they're explaining to their biggest customer why production is on hold. That's a real day-to-day exposure. It's not just the catastrophic recall scenario. It's every audit, every inspection, every customer verification visit. When a regulator or customer asks you to trace a specific lot or raw material all the way through the production and out to distribution, you need to be able to answer it in hours, not days, not weeks, but hours. FSMA, GSI, customer audits, all of it requires documentation. Airtight, traceable chain. If yours isn't automated and system connected, you've got exposure that shows up a lot more often than you might think. And here's the thing, none of this is getting easier. As your operation grows, the complexity doesn't just grow with it, it compounds. Margins are tighter on every batch. Ingredient costs are all over the place. Substitutions are more frequent. The regulatory bar keeps moving up. Audits are happening more often, and most of you aren't shrinking your product portfolios. You're expanding them. Every one of those trends widens the gap between your ERP and your plant floor. Companies that get ahead of this now are turning it into real competitive advantage. The ones that will wait are just making it harder and more expensive to fix later. So I want to pause here and be really clear about something. I'm not here to tell you to throw out your ERP. That's not the message. ERP is genuinely great at the things it was designed to do. Financial management, procurement, inventory evaluation, sales and order management, reporting, all of that. ERP handles really well. It's worth every dollar you spend on it for those functions. Where it needs backup is process manufacturing layer. Things like formula-centric production, multiple output batches, in other words, different container sizes for the same formula. Batch ticket processing that provides batch tickets in a way that's meaningful to the production floor. Integrated quality and formula level scheduling, not scheduling at the SKU level, which most discrete systems do, but schedule at the formula level, at the compounding level, and then schedule the packaging after the compounding. Those are areas where a purpose-built solution fills the gap. The goal isn't replacement of ERP, it's extension. Keep your ERP doing what it does well and plug in something that was actually built for the way you make things. So what does that purpose-built layer actually look like? 4 core things. A formula-centric manufacturing. Everything is built around formulas, not SKUs. The system scales production based on your actual raw inputs and connects batch runs the way you actually run them. An example of that would be a formula tells you all of the raw material inputs, and your outputs from that batch may be multiple containerizations. So being able to work at the formula level rather than the SKU level allows you to think in terms of the mixer rather than the fill line. So keep the mixer running with the appropriate things and then fill off of that mix off of a single batch ticket. That's what a purpose-driven software application is going to do for you, rather than trying to make a discrete solution do what otherwise other solutions could do rather easily. Real-time batch processing. As a batch runs, inventory gets consumed automatically. Actual yields get tracked against what you expected, and your process parameters get logged. Process parameters are times and temperatures and flow rates and things like that. So not just inventory, but also what was going on at the time during that production run, or what was supposed to happen versus what did happen. Not from an inventory perspective, not from a quality perspective, but more from an operations, times, temperatures, things like that. And with this, there's no manual catch up at the end of the day. You have embedded quality management, raw material testing, in-process checks, finished good QC, all in the same system. Automated hold and release workflows that instantly update your inventory status, and lot trace and recall readiness. One click to trace forward or backward through your entire lot genealogy. Audit documentation is ready to go whenever you need it. This isn't a wish list. These are capabilities that hundreds of food manufacturing companies are running in production right now. So when you're looking at any technology solution for process manufacturing, here's how I'd suggest thinking about it. There are 4 areas to evaluate. The operational fit. Can it actually handle formula-based production? Can it do substitutions? And can yield variability be tracked and handled the way your operation actually works? Does it tie the plant floor activity back to your financial and inventory systems in real time? Scalability, can it grow with you? More formulas, more production volume, more facilities. Basically, will it hold up? In compliance and risk, does it give you end-to-end traceability? Is quality built into the workflow so you're not relying on manual documentation? And then implementation risk. Can it plug into your existing ERP without blowing up your operation? Does it get you to value quickly without a 2-year implementation project? A good solution should check all 4 boxes, and it should do that relatively quickly. You should be able to get low-hanging fruit and quick wins quickly. If the system you select is weak in any one area, that's a real risk. It's not just a gap. So here are 4 quick questions worth honestly asking your team. Are spreadsheets critical to your production reporting? If the answer is yes, that's a gap, and it's a risk. If your QC data is sitting outside your ERP, if it's in a separate system or on paper, you don't have a single source of truth. Can you do a recall in under 2 hours? Regulators are moving toward expecting that. If the answer is no, that's something to take seriously before you actually need it. And are you doing heavy customizations to your ERP just to handle process manufacturing? Because that's an expensive way to maintain. It's fragile when things change and usually doesn't scale well. If any of those things hit home, you've got a gap that's worth addressing. Let me share a real example of what this looks like when it comes together. This is from Mother Murphy's Flavors. They've been making flavors since 1946. So they've seen a lot of different ways of doing things. Once they've got their production systems properly connected with their ERP, everything changed. Sales orders flowed straight into production. Raw materials got consumed automatically as batches ran. Finished goods were created in real time, but they didn't stop there. They connected intelligent scales directly to the system. So when operators were measuring and dispensing ingredients on the floor, those weights fed directly into the electronic batch record automatically. No manual entry, no transcription errors. The system captures exactly what went into every batch, updates inventory in real time, and it's all tied together in one clean record. And the thing I really love about Mother Murphy's is they've kept building on it. As their operation has evolved, the environment around them has changed. They've continued to grow what the system does for them. It's not a one-time implementation. It's a platform they keep extending. That's exactly how it's supposed to work. And accounting and production finally stay in sync, all the way from purchasing through invoicing. The operations team could see exactly what was happening on the plant floor without chasing down reports or waiting for someone to update a spreadsheet. That's the real payoff. It's not just cleaner data. It's a completely different way of running the business. All right, so let me bring it home with 4 things I really want you to take away from today. First, ERP is necessary, but it's not enough on its own. Don't ditch it. Extend it. Second, process manufacturing is different, and it needs tools that are actually built for it. That variability is not going away. Third, integration always beats customization. Plugging in a purpose-built solution that works for your ERP is going to outperform trying to customize your own ERP into something that it was never meant to be. And fourth, whatever you put in place needs to scale as your complexity grows. Don't just solve for today. Think about where your operation is headed over the next 3 to 5 years and make sure your tech can get you there. All right, so that's a wrap on the formal content. I want to thank you for spending time with me today. I really appreciate it. I'm going to leave you with one question to chew on. Is your current systems architecture actually built for the next 5 years? Or are you just managing for right now? If you want a straight answer to that question for your own operation, we'd love to help. We do complementary system assessments. We look at your ERP setup, your plant floor process, and give you a clear picture of where the gaps are and what they're costing you. No pitch, no pressure, just an honest look. You can reach us. There's our phone number. You can hit our website. You can send us an email. We're on social platforms, mostly LinkedIn and X, but you can find us all over the place. This year, we are celebrating 25 years in business. So we've been around the block a few times, and we've seen a lot. We'd love to talk to you more. So feel free to reach out to us. Okay, I'm here to answer any questions that might have come up during the presentation.
All right. Thank you for that excellent presentation, Randy. At this point, we will proceed over to the Q&A portion of the program. So those of you in the audience, if you haven't already, please enter your questions in the chat to the right. We've received a lot of great questions already, so we'll just dive right in. The first one here, our ingredient costs are always changing. So how do we stay on top of margins when we're constantly adjusting formulas?
Yeah, so the formula adjustment is the part, it's just going to happen as it happens for various reasons, trying to find substitutes because of availability or things like that. But it's the cost side that you really need to watch. Typically, you get some kind of a head up from at least one of your suppliers. I can speak specifically for Vicinity. What we do is we do create a way for you to put these theoretical future costs in the system so that a cost roll-up can work off of those. It gives us the engine for you to identify which formulas have particularly shifted based on this one or multiple ingredients. So it's actually a pretty big deal in our solution, at least, where you're basically giving a snapshot of these are my anticipated raw material costs for these raw materials. Doesn't have to be all of them. And the cost roll-up will come through and say, hey, these changed by this percent. You can take further action on that. So the problem exists when you're relying on inventory costs, because then it's got to come through purchasing, and you got to do a PO receipt, and most systems make you have to have an invoice to be matched against it, so we delay even further. The concept I'm talking about is more theoretical in nature. It's before the inventory is purchased. It's before we make any real procurement decisions. So that's what I'd be looking for, cost roll-up with an alternate cost ID, so to speak.
Right, that's great insight. Good to know. Another one here, we've had to customize our ERP to fit how we run, but how do we know if we're pushing it too far?
Well, yeah, you're going to start seeing it primarily in upgrades. That's going to be the first thing you're going to see. Keeping it current and keeping it up to date. So from a technology stack or from a technology side, different systems are changing at different times. They're upgrading. And so being able to keep all those in sync can be a real challenge, especially if you've customized a bunch of different solutions. So a custom solution, in my opinion, it's one of those things that loses luster over time. And what I mean by that is the very first day when you're testing, this looks beautiful. And then as the days and the weeks and the months go on, your operations may change, scenarios may come up, the way you process your product may be different, affecting that customization. So if you're going to customize your solution, be ready for put in your budget another 100% of that for the first handful of years just to support it, to make those changes that you've got. I am a developer of an off-the-shelf product, so I clearly am not going to be a customization kind of person. But those are some of the things you really need to take into consideration. What I really like about an off-the-shelf product is we are taking care of all those updates. We are testing it. We are putting it through its rigors before it even hits your area. So I personally, if you can get away with an off-the-shelf product with little to no customizations, that's ideal.
Interesting. That's good to know. All right. We don't really know our true production costs until the end of the month. How big of a problem is that?
Well, I guess it depends on how long the month is. Yeah, obviously, the right way to be doing this is to be looking at on a batch by batch, really formula by formula basis. So we've done some work with clients where on a routine basis, the system reports back, here are the costs per batch aggregated over, say, the last 5 or 10 batches. So you can start seeing some trends. Obviously, if it's bouncing all around, that's not really a trend. But if you're actually seeing a slope that you can actually calculate and predict, then you've got something you ought to go look at. You may have a material handling issue, you may have a machine issue, you may have a dispensing issue, things like that. It may not affect quality, but it may affect yields, hence costs. So looking at it on a batch by batch basis and allowing the system to report exceptions back to you is a really good way to do it. I like the idea of waiting to the end of the month to look at it in aggregate, but I wouldn't wait to the end of the month to do that. So I'd look at it a number of batches. I wouldn't be going and changing processes over one batch yield, but I would mark that formula as the next time we run it, we might want to take a look at it and see how we're doing it and see if there are any efficiencies that we can get.
That's great. Kind of benefits to looking at it at both levels.
That's right.
All right. Regulations feel pretty complex right now. So what should our systems be able to do for a recall?
Yeah. Well, first off, as I talked about in the presentation, there's 2 parts to this. There's the audit and then there's the actual recall. Speed and accuracy are obviously the 2 most important parts. That you can demonstrate that we do a recall, raw material to finished good, or the other way around, virtually instantaneously, is a big deal. And it's a big deal to your customers. It's also a big deal to the regulators. So being able to demonstrate core competency of your system to be able to address an audit issue is really big. As a previous auditor, I can tell you that the people that were able to answer a question quickly, grab a piece of paper out of their notebook or pull something up on the screen and say, this is where it went, this is how I took care of it, this is how we addressed it, that gives comfort for the unknown, for the things I didn't ask about. So having the easy things to take care of taken care of will help you in some of the other areas as well. On Mother Murphy's, we alluded to them in the presentation. One of the things that I was just amazed by is when they have customers come in for a visit, they demo our solution to their customer. That's not a commercial for vicinity as much as it's them showing that we got our stuff together, that we have electronic records. If you want to know this, I can go find it easily, and it doesn't take me all day to find it. That gives comfort. And that was an example from a customer. It's the same way from an auditor. You make the auditor's job a little bit easier, things are going to go a little easier for you. I'm not going to say they're going to give you a pass, but I am going to say that they're going to look at you a little more kindly if you've got your stuff together.
Right. Absolutely. Thanks for explaining. Another one here. We're adding another production line, and I don't think our current systems will scale. What red flags should I be pointing out to leadership?
Well, if your gut is telling you that, then I think you ought to probably be raising it to some people already. But some of the red flags that I'd be looking at is around scheduling. I'd be looking to see what process a person has to go through to schedule the existing lines. And then when you add another line, what kind of complexity is going to be added with that second line? An example, are you going to be transferring products between lines? In other words, maybe one line does an intermediate only to be going to the second line to be finishing it out, as an example. That complexity, how you're adding that second line and how it interacts with the previous lines is really important to look at. If you're just simply setting up a static line that is not connected in any way to the other lines, you're really just talking about a capacity kind of, you're adding capacity to the shop floor. You're just adding one more thing to schedule if they are truly autonomous from each other. If there's connection between them, you have now increased the complexity exponentially, because now you're having to schedule two lines against each other with kind of varying capacities for each of those lines. So the red flags I'd be looking for are, how similar is this line to the existing lines that I've got? How can I just lift and copy and paste to a new line? Most systems are going to be able to handle that without any trouble. Or is this line significantly different than the previous lines we're bringing up? That's how I'd be addressing. I'd be looking for the differences and make sure that the system can handle those differences.
Interesting. That sounds really helpful to follow. Another one here, there's a lot of talk about AI. Is it relevant for formula manufacturing? And if so, where should we start?
First off, I would say it's relevant to everybody, formula manufacturing or otherwise. It's really a topic that we are all collectively coming together and learning about. This is the approach that we're taking with Vicinity, and I think it's relevant to food manufacturers as well. One of the first things to do is identify, how can AI help my business? What are things that something that is able to see all data and be able to correlate that data together, what could it help me do? That's your long-term approach. Immediately what you do are, what are tasks that I'm doing regularly that a machine can address? An easy one is have it read through your emails and your calendar and make sure you haven't missed anything. Is there something important that's sitting out there that I haven't responded to? That's easy. That is low-hanging fruit. And an organization really needs to adopt, if they're going to be using AI in food manufacturing, they need to adopt it internally and eat their own food first. Figure out AI on yourself first, on the processes that you've got going on. For example, Vicinity is connecting AI into our databases, so we can start asking questions about quality or about scheduling or about lot expirations or things like that, so we can cull the data that we've got to be able to give us meaningful answers. That's kind of the next level that you ought to be looking at. And that's more of a business intelligence level. And that's where you're running reports. You're telling me, where are my shortages? What should I be making? What should I be buying? Those are all things we've been doing for years, business intelligence. AI does that. So AI can go out to various sources. Databases are an obvious source, and help you bring data in a way that we can consume easily. So that's the second layer. The first layer was just internal, office kind of stuff. The next layer is kind of BI, business intelligence, that is English translatable. So you can type in a query and it'll go and pull that data and bring it to you in a usable format. The third level is the one that I think we're a little ways away from in the food world, and that's a generative AI. And that's where you would say, I want a formula that does X, Y, and Z. It needs to be in this cost. It has to have this nutritional values, et cetera. And then it goes out and comes up with a formula for you. The challenge and the problem that we deal with is that AI, in that scenario, in a generative perspective, it needs to really understand what it's doing. It needs to understand food profiles. It needs to understand nutritional rules. It needs to understand even operational data. I'm not convinced that most of us as food manufacturers have enough data to really help AI create those formulas. the way it gets that data is a scary proposition, and that is opening up to the outside world and being able to see other information about formulas that isn't in your data set. That also means that potentially you're exposing your formulas to the outside world. That's why I think we're not there yet, because I don't think we as an industry are quite ready for this area of AI that doesn't have those guardrails. Who's going to see that data? Who's going to use that data? Is going to be used properly, et cetera. So AI is going to be one of those things that my kids are really going to be doing big things with. Me at 62, probably not quite so much at the generative level. We're going to see how fast it goes. My concern is the technology is going to go way faster than our guardrails are going to go. And we're seeing it in music. We're seeing it in broadcast media. We're seeing it in all kinds of areas where AI is going crazy, giving great content. Well, I'm not sure about great, but it's getting content. But is it right? And is it yours? Is it somebody else's? And that's where my concerns are for AI. The good news is I'd start simple. I'd introduce it in the organization and see how AI can help with your regular day-to-day, and then expand that out to more business intelligence where you're looking at data within your organization. What am I making? What's it costing me? Where are my yields? Things like that. And then the final one, we'll see where generative AI takes us over the next months and years to come.
That's great. That makes a lot of sense. I know that is a major point of consideration, is taking that next step into generative AI. So yep. That's great to know. The last one I see here, we constantly deal with yield variability. How much should our systems help us manage that?
Yeah, so the system is, first off, the system is going to tell you where you have your variability, right? So it's going to track your raw materials in, your outputs, finished good or intermediates out, to be able to calculate that yield on a batch by batch basis. So the system is going to be able to be the scorekeeper for that. The next thing you need is the tool to raise those exceptions to your forefront. I heard somebody in a conference once use the example of driving your automobile. He was driving to give his speech, and he was talking about, I checked 5 different things and 20 of these buzzers, and et cetera and so on. When you're driving a car, you're generally not focused on the dashboard. You shouldn't be. And you're only looking at the things that you need at the moment, and bring up the things that are important for you to take into consideration. Things like you're about to run out of gas with your gas light. You need to change your oil with the oil light. Your brakes aren't good, or you put your parking brake on and it's still right. Those are exception-based reporting. And when we're talking about yield analysis, that's what you should be looking at. You should have some type of a par, some type of bogey you're working off of. And every batch, formula by formula, you'd have a bogey or a par. Every batch should be compared against that par, that's that standard yield. If it's significantly above or below that, raise it up. You can't do anything about the batch you just did, but you can do something about the next batch you're going to do of that same formula. So what I would be doing is marking that formula. So when the next batch ticket is generated, users are able to see this one is under audit. We need to look at why our yields are off. So let's measure more accurately. Let's watch as we do our processing. Let's really button it up and see if that yield comes back where it was, because that'll help us understand where the problem is. So the system itself is the scorekeeper. What you choose to do with it and how you choose to report on that and show those exceptions, you're about to run out of gas, that's the key. And firms like us and others out there can help you do that and help you manage by exception rather than trying to manage everything exactly the same way. Just put these things on autopilot, things you do really well, and watch for those exceptions popping up. That would be my recommendation.
All right, that's great insight. Okay, so we're just about out of time. So again, thank you, Randy. And thank you to our sponsors at Vicinity Software. But mostly thanks to all of you in the audience for your participation today. For those of you who have asked, you'll be receiving a follow-up email with a link to watch the on-demand recording. Included will also be a link to our feedback survey. We'd appreciate if you just took a couple minutes to share with us what you thought about today's program. Thanks once more to our attendees around the world. We'll see you back here on Thursday, April 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific for our next Pro Food World webinar, From Concept to Capacity, 5 Success Factors for Scalable Process Systems. Finally, before we wrap up, just a quick reminder about Pack Expo International 2026, coming up October 18th to the 21st in Chicago. This show is your chance to see the widest range of packaging and processing solutions anywhere, and to connect with experts who can help you to find solutions. Whether you're focused on automation, sustainability, food safety, digitalization, or something else, with 2,600 exhibitors on the show floor, you can't go wrong. Make sure to register, and don't forget that you can do so for free with the comp code webinar. Visit packexpointernational.com for all the details. Have a great day.